Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network. We make our way through the A24 filmography and along the way bring you interviews with the talent involved. After a brief break, we're back to review A24's latest small screen show, Beef. And joining me as ever is Dallas King. Dallas, welcome back.
It's good to be back. Always fresh from the front of the cameo screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got to introduce a couple of A24 films recently. It was quite a pleasure to do that with you, Dallas.
It was, yeah, and I'm glad that you're still fond of me, Lobster, even after all these years of doing it. So,
and I'm really excited to welcome comedian and the OG co-host of the Pod Charles Cinecast, Ariane Anindita. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys? Thank you for having me.
I've been really looking forward to getting you on this podcast for years, and I've always, we had your original co-host Jonathan Foster on a couple of years ago,
my dad.
Now we've got you, and it was bizarre. I always had you in mind. I thought, I would love to get her on. I loved your time on the Pod Charles Cinecast, and then I noticed on like the A24 like Instagram feed one day, I was like, oh, there she is. Like there was, and it seemed like, and I think you were wearing like some A24 t-shirt, and I thought, there we go, that's my sign. I saw your tweets about Beef, and I thought, we've got to make this happen.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I was doing stand-up in that t-shirt, and then I was just like, yeah, you know what? I have no white t-shirts for the week. I'll just wear this one. And yeah, big A24 heads. We all are back at the Prince Charles, I think.
So what are kind of some of your A24 highlights, and what is your take on them as clearly a t-shirt carrying A24 head?
Yeah, I'm a card carrying A24 member. It's so embarrassing, but
you're with friends here. We've all got them.
Oh, gang. Wonderful. Yeah, I just think that they put out really, really great stuff, and what I find really interesting is that they're like a distributor, but they've built such a reputation and a cult following that I think people who aren't really that familiar with the way films are pushed out would be like, oh yeah, that's such an A24 film, when you can't really ascribe that to like different filmmakers. You know what I mean? Like you have the Ari Asters and your Bo Burnhams, say, but they're under the same umbrella. Do you know what I mean? It's my favorites. My favorite film from their roster is Uncut Gems. I famously am obsessed with Uncut Gems. And Beef is great. Gosh, there's so many. I'm looking over at I just saw Beau is Afraid.
We haven't got that in the UK yet. It's still like a week and a half away from finally coming out here. I've been actively avoiding the trailers because I realized it's like a week or two to go, and I've not watched a single clip. And like that's twice in the recent weeks I've been in the cinema and it's come on, and I've gone, I just need to step aside for just a minute I want to be surprised by this. I don't know how good it's going to be or not, but I want to be surprised.
That's another conversation.
Have you bought the silk pajamas yet?
No, I have not bought the silk pajamas yet. I have yet to get paid from work, so as soon as that paycheck drops, I'm getting the silk pajamas.
Is that what you're using your A24 discount for free shipping this month to get, Dallas?
Absolutely.
Possibly. No comment.
So one of the highlights you mentioned was Beef. So starring Steven Yeun and Ali Wong, across 10 episodes, a near accident in a parking lot turns two strangers into enemies. The tit-for-tat relationship that develops leads to escalating acts of revenge as Amy and Danny learn about each other's identities and families and become more and more involved in each other's lives. So before we dive into the show, I want to get an idea of how familiar we are with the cast. Ali Wong, before Beef came to Netflix, was also known for her Netflix stand-up shows, and Steven Yeun makes his third A24 project after Minari and the Humans. But Ari, what was your feelings when it came to sort of these actors? How familiar were with you, or were these sort of kind of brand new to you?
No, I've been so familiar with them. Ali Wong is one of my, because I do stand-ups, she's been one of my heroes for a while. And I've watched Steven Yeun since The Walking Dead and when he was on Funny or Die. So it's kind of like, watching sort of two really influential people in my own sort of creative journey kind of collaborate was really wild. yeah, it was and it's also cool to kind of see Stephen return to his comedic roots a little bit, which I really appreciated. Because Beef is really funny. Even though it's really intense, it's so funny.
What about for you, Dallas? How familiar were you with these two leads?
Ali Wong, I think I was first introduced to her through Always Be My Maybe, her rom-com that she did on Netflix, and then that led me to her stand-up, as you know, it comes up at the end of the film, and it's like, you might also want to watch these, and I went, yes, I think I will, and then I did. And then Stephen Yeun introduced him through The Walking Dead, a show which I got about 4 or 5 seasons into. Then it sort of became apparent that, you know, as you know, the show's basically a big metaphor for, you know, it's not the zombies, it's humans who are terrible, and it was just like Rick's party just kept going to a new place, being okay for a couple of weeks, and then ruining that particular society, and then moving on to the next one. So obviously, you know, Glenn's fate in that was a huge thing, which they tried to do a misdirect, but I'm kind of happy it did go that way, because it did allow Stephen Yeun to depart The Walking Dead and do a variety of other projects, sort of like Okja and stuff. But I think for me, the highlight of his filmography is Burning. That really showed a sort of different side. He is so good in that, and unlike anything, oh God, I've just used one of those phrases that I hate people using, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. But yes, it was like anything I'd seen from him before, and you know, he's now doing great films like The Humans as well, the other A24 film that he starred in alongside Minari, and then you've got Nope as well. So you know, he's got a wide variety of performances in there, and I was really excited to see what this was going to be. I didn't know a huge amount about the show other than the sort of the initial premise, and then I was kind of going in, I guess, probably expecting something like Changing Lanes, a sort of a thriller from, I think, the early noughties that featured Ben Affleck and Samuel L. Jackson as two people who get into a road rage incident, and then it just sort of escalates from there. So yeah, I think the show that I got was not entirely what I expected, but I guess we'll go into why.
Yeah, I was really, one of the highlights of this has been like, I knew of the name Ali Wong, but I'd never seen anything she'd done so far. I mean, I think I tend to watch crap reality dating shows on Netflix more than anything else. So there's this whole area that's completely untouched, but I've really dived into her stand-ups afterwards, and I just am absolutely in love with her. Like, she's just someone you can't stop watching when she's on screen. And yeah, I mean, for you, you've mentioned she's like been an inspiration for you with the stand-up comedy. What is about sort of Ali Wong as a comedian that sort of kind of appeals to you?
I think she's just raunchy in a way that a lot of Asian women don't really get to be. Like, it's her, Margaret Cho, and yeah, it's just cool to see her just say whatever she wants. And she looks like me. She's a short Asian woman that wears glasses on stage, and I think it was just cool to see her do all that. And she's so funny. She says the most ridiculous, outlandish things. In her last special, she talked a lot about wanting to cheat on her husband, and I was just like, Ali, you're so messy. But I'm living for it. I think she is one of the best stand-ups that's around right now. That's at least touring right now. But yeah, I have, like, I think in the last couple of weeks or months, I think that Beef had come out, I have a different relationship to the two leads now. But yeah, definitely she's a huge part of when I got started out doing stand-up anyway. I was like, oh, that's so cool, she looks kind of like me. She's also half like Southeast Asian, which was really cool to see as well, as somebody who is Southeast Asian, that, oh, you can actually do that for a living. Like, it's not just the John Mulaney's of the world, you know.
Dallas, I know when we kind of started speaking about this one, for example, I was like, I can't wait for this, because I feel like we've not got much of the A24 TV shows here in the UK. Like, there's still no Rami season 3 yet. And I was like, this will be something that we can talk about and dive into, so much so that I thought it was originally coming out like March 5th, not April 6th. And I remember diving into Netflix that Friday, like going, here we go, let's watch Beef. And it to wait a month yet to watch it. But how did you watch it, Dallas? Did you go for the Netflix model of like binging it all at once? How did you kind of assimilate it?
I think it came out over the Easter weekend here. I think it was April 6th, and that was the weekend that I was down in London for Star Wars celebrations. So I came to it a bit late, and then I think there was a couple of other shows that I was watching, and I ended up watching it in about sort of 3 sections. I think I watched like the first 3 episodes, and then sort of the middle 3, and then sort of like the last 4 on the run. And so, I know a lot of people who sort of binged it all on opening weekend. I think there was a point where it wasn't quite grabbing me sort of in the middle that I would have normally sort of just stayed up, watched the whole thing. So something didn't quite click in the middle for me, which is why I then watched it in sections. And then I had a slight issue, which I guess, it's the elephant in the room that we will need to talk about, where all the discourse appearing online was not particularly about the show or the quality of the show. It was about the actions of one particular person. So therefore, going back into it, it was kind of impossible for me to not kind of have certain things going around in my head while watching the show. So it was kind of a unique experience for something like this, where I expect I would have had a totally different reaction if I'd watched all 10 episodes like in the first weekend, I think.
What about for yourself, Ariana? How did you watch it? Did you blitz it over the weekend like an Ali Wong special, or did you try and savor it?
I attempted to savor it, but I did blitz it. I think I finished it in about 2 days because it came out on like a really busy weekend, and I was just like, oh, I really want to just go home and watch the show. And yeah, no, just what Dallas was saying, I finished the show before any of that kind of David Cho stuff came out, and I was just like, man, for the people that were really getting into the show, and to not have like your image of the show tainted, especially by someone who's done and said pretty horrendous things, it again opens up that conversation about how we consume the media that we consume in relation to how we talk about it online. I think it's been it's been interesting to watch and sort of kind of find myself in it, because I was talking about beef so much when it came on. I was just like, I hadn't seen anything like this. Yeah, the unlike anything I've ever seen before, which is a thing we say a lot now. It was something that emotionally was just really, really like raw, and it felt really cathartic upon the first watch. Just that blasting out over the weekend, I was just like, I really needed to watch something like that, because it just validated so many kind of different angers that I think I and a lot of people in the Asian diaspora have felt over the last couple of years, which I think we'll see more of in maybe in probably like mostly American media, but I'm surely across the world.
And Dallas, what was your reaction to it? Obviously, you paced yourself. You kind of ended up in the middle of the discourse through it. What did you make of sort of beef? Was it kind of what you expected when you kind of went in?
It wasn't initially. I mean, I think like the first couple episodes, like the ending of the first episode, where Stephen Young's character gets sort of a mild bit of revenge by sort of peeing on the bathroom floor and then running off. Really delighted that he did, and I don't know why, but it's just in my head I expected like an almost sort of back and forth, like one episode from Stephen Young's character, one episode from Ali Wong's character's point of view, where each of them get their own back, and then the tables are turned week on week. But it wasn't really that show. I mean, yes, both of them do gain the upper hand at various times, but I wasn't maybe expecting such a sort of deep dive into the characters. Where, if this was a movie, it would have been a very sort of linear bang, bang, bang action plots, come to a big conclusion, which, we do get in this, don't get me wrong, but the fact that it's developed over these 10 episodes, even though they're relatively short, so episodes sort of 30 to 40 minutes, you do get an incredible sort of depth of character in both of them, and including actually some of the supporting characters as well here, which I it took me a while, but I did learn to really sort of appreciate sometimes I think are these sort of subplots really necessary? But I think when it all sort of pulls together in the sort of final 2 episodes, I really did appreciate the fact that we learn so much about these characters, and you can understand who you get a real complete picture of who they are and why the two of them are so incredibly angry at everyone, the world, and also themselves. And so, yeah, it was more of a slow burn for me, but yeah, no, in the end, it did land where I hoped it would.
Our kind of two lead characters, obviously Stephen Yeun is Danny Cho, a down on his luck contract, and we've got Ali Wong as sort of Amy Lau, a sort of small business owner who owns a plant selling business. What did you make of these character choices, Ariana? What did you kind of make of our main leads that were kind of guiding us through these 10 episodes and sort of their characters?
Yeah, I thought they were really kind of two ends of, I guess, the same spectrum, or two sides of the same coin, in the sense that obviously, like, socioeconomically they're very different, but they do share this similar sort of simmering rage, which I thought was really cool. And I think they're both very frustrated in a similar way that a lot of I've been told, at least, older millennials feel that way, especially like my Asian American friends, where it's just they're always in this limbo of like their lives aren't exactly where they want it to be, even though they've been doing everything they've been told they're supposed to do. And you see that in Amy and all of her success, and she still feels such a dissatisfaction. And you see that with Danny as well, who has sort of done almost the right things and is still sort of grinding away when we meet him. But yeah, I think that the two of them are they balance each other out, and I think that's what draws them together, even though they just really fucking hate each other.
No, it was like, actually, towards the end of the first episode, it was like there was clearly this tension between the two of them. But at the end of that episode, I was just thinking of that the gif from I, Tonya, of Alice and Janie going, "You two fuck yet?" Because that's where I thought it was going to go at that point. Of course, it turned out to be the other Cho, but never mind.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think they played that up as well. I think I watched an interview where they were just like, yeah, in that scene in the garage, we were flirting, essentially. Because essentially the way they met is also like it's a meet cute, except it just goes in the opposite direction. It just becomes very violent, as opposed to, I think structurally the show kind of is a romantic comedy, except it's not as, sweet and tender as we'd expect a rom-com would be.
Dallas, are you classed as an older millennial, or have you just crossed over?
I think I would be technically Generation X. I think. Yeah, I think I'm on the cusp. Yeah.
As a Generation Xer, what did you make of these characters? Maybe I'm classed as the aging millennial, as a 36-year-old. I'm not too sure.
I mean, yeah, no, I totally get the point about. I think it's something similar to sort of 8th grade, where I think on our show about that, where it's like, I didn't go to high school, at this point in time, but I did go to high school or grammar school, secondary school, whatever you want to call it. But so the brilliant thing about Bo Burnham's film was, even though I could not relate to specific incidents in his life there, I could still relate to the pain of going through school. And I think that's something here which works is, this show is not particularly, maybe not for me as a cis white millennial / Generation X person from Scotland. However, it is universal enough in the themes and its exploration that I could still, empathize and relate to the characters and the sort of thing about, trying to do the right thing and, failing. I mean, times have certainly changed since I went to university, where it's almost that thing of people of my age or my generation, which is, in their sort of mid-40s, born in the 80s, they're not the baby boomers, but, it was drilled into us basically, like, you go to school, then you go to university, you go and get a job, and then you work hard, you try and buy a house if you can indeed afford one, because, our parents' generation basically screwed that for everyone else. And then it's like, you've got to meet someone, you've got to get married, you've got to have kids and stuff like that. That's what you're supposed to do. whereas there are younger generations now who are basically like, no, A, we can't afford that, and also B, that's not what we want to do. And there is no longer that pressure or whatever to go to university, to get married and stuff like that. So sort of seeing Danny sort of like, he's like trying to be, there's this stuff where, he's been slightly complicit in the failure of his parents' business, but now it's all on him. And, he's trying to do the right thing, but just one reason or another just can't get it to happen. And that pressure has built to this point where, he's got these 3 hibachi grills. And the reason why, when you find out the reason why he has, in particular, 3 hibachi grills, is really quite heartbreaking. And yeah, you can really sort of get into it. And then also on the flip side, Amy Lau, who's done everything right and is, for one reason or another, still not happy. It's like a lose-lose scenario. And it's like doing what society wants you to do clearly is no guarantee of happiness. You've got to do what you want to do. And for a lot of us, I think, of that sort of age, I think I probably would be about the same sort of age as the characters in this. So sometimes we just don't know what we wanted, because it's different from what we've been told we want. Again, I'm maybe slightly meandering there.
No, I think we've all been socialized to believe certain things, and like I can't exactly relate to either Amy or Danny from like a I don't really like. I understand Danny's specific Koreanness, the same with sort of Amy's kind of mixed Asian background, where but they're not really similar or specific to my experience, but I get it, which I think is really speaks to the universality you were talking about. And yeah, the hibachi girls absolutely sent me. My first response, I laughed. I was like, that's so funny that he Googled least painful way to kill yourself. And still didn't go through with it, which, I didn't, I just thought also what a tight opening episode that you meet him straight away at this giant department store, and then not even 2 minutes in, the inciting incident occurs. I think just screenwriting wise, I was just like floored.
Although there is potentially a flip side to that. I don't know if anyone saw the interview with Dexter Fletcher about Ghosted, and about basically he was told that Apple needed something to happen in like the first 30 seconds or people might switch over. So although I'm sure the writing behind Beef was strong enough that it didn't need that, but yes, no, you do have to start off with a bang, it seems, with streaming platforms these days.
Tangent, it's so wild to me that Dexter Fletcher made Ghosted. I loved Wild Bill when it came out, and I was just like, wait, are we talking about the same Dexter Fletcher? Are we talking about the same guy?
And you've touched on it, Ariana, but how important is the kind of Asian representation on shows like this, with like the characters, kind of cultural backgrounds, and how it kind of informs their kind of actions? Because and what does this kind of show do well is we're so used to really like East Asian representation in Hollywood as being ripe with Orientalism and the stereotypes, and often not casting actual Asian actors in these types of roles.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really, really cool to see that. Well, for all the Korean cast members were actually Korean. Like, there's so many instances in Hollywood, especially, where they just see, oh, you're Asian, you can play all sorts of Asians. Like, there've been, like with Lana Condor, who played Lara Jean and To All the Boys I Loved Before. It still happens. I think they came out in like 2018. She is Vietnamese, but they had her play a Korean girl. And it was just cool to see that the people with the cultural specificities needed to tell this story brought it to the table. But then I also noted that the showrunner also said that these people just happen to be Asian. Like they're everything surrounding them culturally, emotionally, they just came out of just them being who they are, and this just happens to be who they are, which is really, really cool. There's a film, I don't know if you've seen it, it was Justin Lin's first film before he did like Fast and Furious and all that. It's called Better Luck Tomorrow, and I think it's like the ancestor to Beef, because it is about kind of Asian Americans that aren't perfect, that don't live up to that like model minority myth. And to be honest, it's like smashing the myth to pieces, which is grand. And I can't even speak to that experience because I'm, you know, I grew up in Indonesia, in England, in Australia, not in the States, and only now have I moved to North America. It's just, oh, your experiences are so much more different than mine, even though we like look the same, or you can probably trace back our ancestry in a certain way whenever I meet other like Southeast Asian people. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Are there maybe elements that the show doesn't do as perhaps well that us as kind of outsiders might not be able to pick up on?
I'm trying to have a think. I feel like I feel like they've done kind of a good job as far as I can remember, because I hadn't seen the show since it came out. I feel like they've done a good enough job. Obviously, they address all these things about, Asian people that date white people, or Asian people that date outside of their kind of ethnic group, which is interesting, but they don't address it in a way that's like, it's in your face, you know? And I think they do it in a really interesting way. Like with her boss, the woman buying the company with Jordan, that she has, her brother has an Asian wife, and then at the end she steals his Asian wife, which I thought that's kind of funny, but also there's something about that I shouldn't find too funny.
Obviously, and one thing I thought was quite interesting was almost that parallel with Minari, that we get to see an insight again with Steven Yeun and this Korean sort of Christian church aspect. What is it, something that you can speak to, where sort of like why this is so important? Because it feels like I never see that represented, and now I've seen it sort of in a film and a TV show in as many kind of years, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really interesting, because I feel like Korean culture, South Korean culture specifically, has now become such a huge part of pop culture, like with K-pop and K-pop, K-dramas. Korean Americans are obviously making a huge splash on the scene. I think it is just a matter of like time, you know, and I think a lot of Korean American filmmakers, writers, poets, you name it, they've all been grinding and making a name for themselves, and they're all coming up or becoming visible in the mainstream zeitgeist at the same time, which I think, again, really, really cool. And I feel like we're all going to get our moment one way or another. Do you know what I mean? Because that's just hopefully that's how the industry works soon in the future. This writer's strike is grand. I'm glad people are striking, but it's also just really I'm sad for my friends that have to strike to do that, but they are doing it so more stories like that can be told. So sorry, I meandered into the writer's strike. That's just been on my mind.
Up the workers, any excuse.
Exactly.
Any excuse.
Solidarity.
It's very easy to kind of focus on our leads, but for me, Paul,
I love Paul.
is really the beating heart of the film. I suppose for you first, Dallas, like, what was your take on the character of Paul?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's initially sort of presented as the dumb younger brother. I guess it was easily done by sort of being on games and investing in crypto, sort of shorthand maybe for that. Or maybe that's just someone coming from my age and my generation. I just do not understand crypto at all. So, but yeah, no, he's naive, but he has a good heart and good intentions, and just sort of kind of gets involved in Danny's schemes. You know, he wants to see the best in his brother, up until the point when Danny reveals that really sort of horrible, nasty thing that he did to his brother, by basically, you know, destroying his college applications and ruining his future just because he didn't want to be left alone to do everything. And he did it from, I mean, his intentions, you know, as misguided as they were, also maybe came from a good place. But yeah, it's sad to see such a inherently sort of nice, likable person get potentially destroyed by just being in the wrong place at the wrong time between these two particular people. So, and also, yeah, because it's like I really thought the sort of relation initially that Amy's character was going to be much more manipulative with Paul in order to get to Danny, but I think it was maybe just young Manzino's performance and the character of Paul that she ended up warming up to him as well. So.
I can tell from your fawning in the background, Ariana, you're
Yeah.
clearly a Paul fan.
I love
What was it
Paul.
about Paul that worked for you?
I adored him. He's so... I think that there just should be more himbos in mainstream culture. I feel like we need to do away with smart guys. No, Paul also, he's a sweetheart. And again, like you said, yeah, wrong place, wrong time. It absolutely broke my heart when Danny, in his 2008 wig, threw away Paul's male applications. Like, it is so devastating. And Paul is just, I feel like Paul encapsulates how a lot of people my age feel right now. It's this sort of dissatisfaction but wanting more on our own terms. I feel like Paul is really his sort of relationship to the internet, like crypto. He wants to travel with his boys, he wants so much for so little work because he knows everything, the way the world is set up has been stacked against him. And I think in Amy he really meets somebody that is an authority figure that hasn't let him down just yet, which I think is really interesting. And it's also interesting how I feel like Paul, despite his age, has constantly been infantilized on the show. Like he's still a little boy. Like he's still being treated like, a little boy, even though he's this huge dude. I think he's just so lovely. And young Mazzino was great on the show. Every time I think of like his character, I think about that moment in like the second to last episode, I think, where he's trying to get Danny up on the wall, and then everything comes out, and then he goes over the wall. You hear gunshots. You don't hear from Paul like until the next episode, which is just like, I was just like, yo, don't hurt my baby. Leave him alone.
The show's filled with so many of these great supporting characters, and what kind of made me reflect, and as Dallas will know all too well, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, but
Hell yeah.
what I found quite interesting was that with Joseph Lee, who plays kind of George, the stay-at-home husband, interestingly enough, he was on Star Trek Picard season 3, which was airing at the same time as this, where he was basically the ship's weapons officer, like, I'm firing weapons, I'm doing this. Didn't really have to do much. And then you had Pate Yasakute, where she was kind of playing sort of the mother-in-law, and her career really has always just been, she's in that thing, where she was like in like 20 odd episodes of Star Trek as a nurse. She randomly appeared in some of the Star Trek movies for a few seconds. You would see her at Star Trek conventions. Like, I never considered her really like a kind of prominent actor, and I was quite amazed to see her go from what her career had been to basically being this regular character in a show like this. And it made me kind of think about how many kind of Asian kind of actors are really kind of reduced to those kind of small minor roles, perhaps not given much things meaningful to potentially do. And then you get opportunities like this that come along, perhaps like once in a lifetime for someone like Patty, or maybe right at the beginning of a career with someone like kind of Joseph Lee. What were some of your kind of favorite supporting kind of characters and kind of maybe some of the acting performances from the supporting cast?
I definitely love George. I'm deeply obsessed with how like pathetic he is in some ways. I think him and Tom from Succession need to get together and talk about their wives. I feel like that'd be a very productive meeting for the two of them. I really liked Naomi, actually, the Jordan's sister-in-law that eventually becomes her wife. I think that's her name, right, Naomi? And because I thought she was just the right amount of waspy to really get under Amy's skin. And it's just funny seeing. Oh, and at the church. So yeah, Justin Min's character, the leader of the church group, choir band, I thought he did a really great job in the amount of time that we got to see him. You get to see this man who starts out sort of lording his success over Danny, and then immediately the opposite, being like, I am jealous of you because my wife thinks you're hot. Like, I'm just like, that's grand. It's so fun to watch, and he's like a really, really great actor, so that was really cool.
Yes. I was going to say that it's a strength to his performance that Lee didn't actually recognize him, given the fact that he'd actually interviewed him on the red carpet at the Edinburgh Film Festival just a few months prior to that. He'd disappeared into the performance. But actually, because we were talking to him and Gulonada on the red carpet about representation and about Asian filmmakers being able to tell their own stories, and it sort of came from actually kind of what you were speaking to there, Lee, about getting the opportunities and stuff like that, and how Ki Hu Kwan was quite vocal after Everything Everywhere All at Once came out and said that the reason he stopped doing movies is because there wasn't the parts for him, or if there was a part, it was a stereotypical part, and he didn't want to do that, and it took a script like Everything Everywhere All at Once for him to come back. And now there seems to be a moment. I think he said it was it Crazy Rich Asians was the film that actually led him to think, actually, maybe we are going to be allowed to tell our own stories from our point of view now. And I think that's, again, something what we've got here, where so many of the cast and crew are telling an authentic story, which is real to them. And
And one of the things, I think it's obviously, as you mentioned, there was the controversy surrounding sort of David Cho in his kind of role as Isaac. I mean, for those that maybe aren't familiar, I think it was maybe about sort of 2014, where he said he engaged in quote unquote, quote, rapey behavior with a masseuse, and sort of tried to claim that it was just all a work of fiction. And the controversy seemed to kind of become even more bigger when sort of the cast of Beef all kind of rallied round him and said, yes, he was clearly joking and so on. For yourselves, obviously Dallas, you mentioned you sort of this disrupted your viewing of Beef and how you sat with it, but for yourselves, do things like this make a difference to how you're able to watch things, or are you able to take yourself out of it? How have you kind of sat with this kind of controversy? I guess Ariana first.
How I sat with it, it's been tough, to be honest, because it is a lot of, I certainly feel a lot of anger, because I think unfortunately a lot of women do have at least one experience of sexual assault or misconduct in their lives, which is really unfortunate. That's what the statistics are. Talk to any woman and she will have a story about a creep. And hearing him be so flippant in a way that's just I'm gonna write it off as I made it up, and B, I was mentally ill, which is, you should excuse me for what I said because of those two things, which I think was, that's not right, dude, that's not cool. And I feel like a lot of people I knew were really upset at the silence from the people behind the show, people associated with the show. And my sort of, I don't know, the way I've sat with it is, I think I need to be able to reconcile, obviously, my own thoughts and my own feelings, and understand that, it doesn't affect, it does say a lot that they would have somebody like that on a set where they had a child on set, which really kind of ticked me off. But I feel like we're all talking, we've all been trying to figure out how to speak about things like this for many, many years now. I think that conversation of, art versus artist and whether or not you can separate them, that keeps coming up continuously, because we haven't figured out a way to talk about it, because it's not black and white. It's not, yes, you should do this, yes, you should do that. It's yeah, well, this is how I feel. Like, I'm a little uncomfortable kind of bringing up or talking about like beef in a way where I'm gushing about it because it was so good. Because at the time, before I knew this, I thought like it's a good piece of television. But then kind of knowing that, oh, they essentially did have a person like David Cho on set. They had David Cho on set with everything he's said, done over the last couple of years. And all of that coming to light was yeah, it's tough to reconcile, and I'm still like reckoning with it. I'm still thinking about it as somebody who really, really vocally enjoyed the show, you know. But then again, it's all about like, well, what can we all do to do better? Because it's not about, you know, us as individuals and getting, you know, wiping our hands clean and shit like that. It's about just, yeah, learning how to have larger, more nuanced conversations that are hopefully productive. Yeah, I hope that wasn't like too much of a hippy-dippy answer.
No, and I think what's probably an element of disappointment on top of that was when I perhaps heard the first thing of like, oh, there was these comments that were made years ago on a podcast, and you're like, okay, things like that can be overlooked or missed. But I mean, there was controversy back, I think, what was it, like 2017, where he had designed a mural, and for those perhaps not familiar, the artwork in Beef is David Cho's artwork, and there had been protests from artists. It had been defaced, all about these comments that had been made sort of 3-4 years earlier on. Like, it wasn't difficult to type his name into Google and discover pushback, you know, outrage, and what he'd actually said and so on. I know that he tried to get the comments deleted of a podcast, etc., but there was definitely a failure somewhere along the lines from the producers to let it get as far as him being cast and so on, which I think was the disappointment, and shows that, you know, it's worrying that he made it that far, but it's worrying as well that to know how many other people have made it through the cracks, and how many David Cho's there could be out there on the next Netflix show you watch, or the next set people work upon, which I think can be worrying and concerning for a lot of people. But for you, Dallas, you said this came up in the middle of your rewatch. Would you have been impacted upon this? You know, you mentioned it was a struggle to come back and rewatch it. Would you have just ditched it because of that and not bothered unless we'd already committed to reviewing it?
I mean, I think there was a point where I was like, do I really want to go back into this, knowing everything that I know? Because, you know, I didn't know how I think the character of Isaac had only been in it very, very briefly, so I didn't know how, you know, how much of his involvement was going to be in the show. I mean, I was then aware, you know, that the artwork, the individual episodes was his, but, you know, I'd sort of seen, by that point, I'd seen the podcast interview that was on Twitter, which I'm not sure if he even has still apologized. I just saw comments that basically he was using copyright to try and get people to take it down off the internet, and so I was like, do I want to go back in? But I did, and, you know, it was a case of like, can I sort of separate the art from the artist here? And, you know, the character of Isaac is a dick, so, you know, he's a dick. So I mean, I think if there'd been anything where his character had sort of like a scene with Wim or something, or there was any indication of a similar type of behavior in his character, I think I would have potentially struggled to continue with it at that point. But I think the disappointing thing for me, it was about a week or so before there was like an official statement came out from like the filmmakers and Ali Wong and Stephen Young, and then this, you know, it's like, oh, he's made a mistake, he's sorry, and he's working on his mental health issues or something like that, which it's wrong to say, but it's coming up for Mental Health Awareness Week, and it does feel like a bit of a cop-out answer, you know, because, you know, the stuff he's saying has not really anything to do with that. So, yeah, it was difficult, but, you know, you've again got, you know, this argument of, well, he wasn't the only person involved in the show. If it was like he did a stand-up show on his own or something, fine, you could write that off. But, you know, there was lots of other people who'd put a lot of hard work into the show, and so therefore, are they all to be penalised for the actions of one person? And then, you know, because I mean, if you look at someone like, if this is Netflix, you know, you got Kevin Spacey, where I think it'd be very, very difficult for me to ever go back and watch sort of House of Cards, which he's the main star or something, but something like Seven, perhaps, or The Usual Suspects, where he's perhaps in a smaller role. Does it take away from the fact? I mean, it will colour your judgment on it, I think, but it maybe still doesn't take away from the fact that those are excellent films as of completely separate from whatever has gone on behind. And every, I guess, film or TV show potentially has stories about it that we don't know about. I mean, anyone who lives in the UK at the moment and is familiar with the BBC, basically anyone who's involved in broadcasting in the 70s and 80s and whatever, it's like, well, question marks. So yeah, it was a difficult one, but I did go back in, and in the end, I'm glad that I did to see how it worked out for everyone, and I was able to complete that journey. But yeah, no, it's in terms of rewatching and stuff like that, it might not be high up on my rewatch list because of that, and because of the way that it was handled, I think, as well.
Yeah, no, I just remember that statement took a while because I think lots of people were rallying to be like, I think Ali Wong went private on Twitter with like a couple million followers after kind of the news broke, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, girl, what are you doing? And then that statement came out, and then the paparazzi photos of her and Bill Hader came out, and I was like, well, the timing of this seems very like conspicuous. But then again, that could just be me and my rotting Hollywood brain, just being like, this is all a plot. But yeah, it's a tough one for sure.
For yourselves, what were the highlights of this season? For you, Ariana, what were your kind of maybe favorite episodes or favorite moments?
I think a lot of my favorite things about the show is definitely the music. I thought excellent music supervision. I loved that moment of Danny in the church singing Amazing Grace. I just thought that was brilliant, and to parallel that with him episodes earlier crying in the church, which I think that's the end of episode 3. I just thought that was really, really powerful, and that's really stayed with me. And also Stephen Yeun is a great singer, so not many people knew that, but I knew that because of my rotting Walking Dead brain. I
think the first episode is pretty much pitch perfect, and then I think we had a brief discussion about this, but I think for me, it kind of peaked in the sort of the last 2 episodes. For me, it sort of embraced the sort of crazy and slightly over the top. I mean, that sort of a whole sort of house siege and Jordan's fate with the panic room door and stuff. It's really like, whoa, what? Really? Wow, that's like it's maybe not in keeping of the tone of what's come before, but it basically sort of dials everything up to 11, and then the sort of final episode where the two of them are stranded alone and finally sort of able to work out their beef, and the whole sort of scene where they eat the berries and start hallucinating and stuff like that. I thought that was probably my favorite bit. I think so. I did see someone on Twitter basically describe like the final episode as, oh, this is like, if this one feels very A24, and I don't know if that was like where it started with like the crows or something talking about ransom, and it just went a bit weird, and therefore that's A24, isn't it? So, but yeah, I mean, the weirdest A24 thing for me was the fact that the A24 logo didn't appear at the beginning, and it was just a random font on Netflix, and I was like, I think I messaged Lee going, what is this? This isn't A24 to me. It's not using the right logo. It should have been like A24 logo made out of marbled beef or something. But maybe it came up at the end.
I think all their TV shows, they do the traditional logo at the end, like just like the same with like Euphoria, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do that on Rami as well. I think
I'm just used to seeing it at the beginning, and then you get the odd person cheering, really sadly, and. Yeah, no, I think, and also just the 2 central performances, because, I was aware of how good Stephen Yeun was, but I was only really familiar with Ali Wong as a comedian and stand-up. So, again, it's probably the wrong person to quote, given what he has come out about him. But Joss Whedon on the on the Serenity and Firefly movie audio commentary was talking about sort of bit part actors, and he said, if you want to get someone to really deliver a great dramatic moment, hire a comedian, because if you can make someone laugh, then you can also make them cry. And the comedic actors are really good at drama, and that's what I thought with Ali Wong here. She was really vicious at times and stuff like that, and was really able to deliver on that heightened sense of her character. So I was very, very impressed with her in this as well.
Her facial twitches had me in a permanent state of anxiety across those 10 episodes. I just could not stop watching her face and just feeling like uncomfortable, and the tension that she could generate in an eyebrow was
Phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
I was very distressed and slightly unnerved when I saw what she got up to with a gun.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Also, what was really impressive about her performance, I think Ali Wong, and she does it in her stand-up as well, she has such a way that she can use her voice. I think the different kind of tones that she holds in her voice, like you can see, she has like her customer service, public-facing voice, and she has this really kind of deeper, darker, sort of like, it's a little scarier. And yeah, no, I think she's absolutely brilliant. And that scene with the gun, also a highlight, by the way. I was like, that's so Ali Wong, that's so her. Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on to chat about Beef, and you're always welcome back. But for those that want to check out like your other podcasts, your stand-up comedy, where can people kind of check out your work?
Yeah, you can find me at Ariane Anindita on Twitter and Instagram. I write a Substack, which is the same, arianeanindita.substack.com, although that's been dormant for a couple months. It'll come back. And I've got a podcast called A Drip Town Lemery, Maine, which is a podcast about pop culture from the noughties and the 2010s, because that was when I was, growing up, unfortunately, because I'm a baby. And yeah, that also needs reviving, but that is also under the umbrella that the Podcast Cinecast is under, the Breadcrumbs Collective, which they're lovely lads, John and Phil. So we gotta shout them out too. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
And if anyone ever gets the chance to check out your podcast talking about Good Burger, I would highly recommend, if you had to dive into one episode of that podcast, the Good Burger episode is a hell of a listen.
Oh, thank you. That was so much fun. Genuinely, that was such a great evening.
I can still picture I think I saw the pictures of you both sort of in the full get up in front of the screen. It looked like a hell of a night.
It was so good. We gave out bagels that night as well, because it was good bagel. That was the pun we were running with. And we had the hats and everything. It was a dream. Oh, thank you. What a nice throwback.
Despite both of us living in Scotland, we're both lifetime members. So yeah,
Wonderful.
We're fully behind all the work you guys have done over the years.
Oh, cheers. I'm still a lifetime member, and I'm in Canada now. So.
Well, thank you everyone for listening along. We'll be back next week to talk about Beau is Afraid finally, but have a lovely week and thanks for listening.